It was supposed to be just another high-profile press conference. The room buzzed with excitement as tech moguls, journalists, and entrepreneurs gathered in the sleek, modern hall of a SpaceX facility. Elon Musk, the man who had redefined the future of space exploration and electric cars, was about to take the stage. His presence alone commanded attention, and the anticipation in the air was palpable. The world watched closely, knowing that every word he spoke could change the direction of humanity. The lights dimmed, the screens flickered to life, and the crowd fell silent. Elon walked up to the podium, his familiar, slightly mischievous smile creeping across his face. As he began speaking about the future of space travel, the latest advancements in Tesla's electric vehicles, and the endless possibilities of artificial intelligence, the room was captivated. Every eye was fixed on him. Every ear was tuned in to his words. But then, something completely unexpected happened. A tiny voice broke through the monotony, small but clear. "Mr. Musk, do you believe in God?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, everything stopped. Elon's words faltered, and the room fell into an eerie silence. The media cameras paused mid-recording, and even the most seasoned journalists exchanged confused glances. No one saw it coming. How could they? In a room filled with tech geniuses and scientific minds, no one had anticipated a question about faith from a little girl no older than 8. Elon blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. He had been asked countless questions about Mars, space exploration, and artificial intelligence. He dealt with all sorts of interviews and press conferences over the years, but this was different. This wasn't about rockets or algorithms. This was a question that went straight to the heart of human existence. The little girl sat at the front, her wide eyes locked on him, waiting for an answer. She wasn't nervous or shy. In fact, she looked completely at ease. Her innocence was disarming, and for a moment, Elon felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. A wave of quiet anticipation rippled through the room. The world watched, waiting for Elon Musk to respond to a question that had nothing to do with his empire or his vision for the future of technology. This was a question about the deepest part of the human experience. Elon's mind raced. What was he supposed to say? What did he believe? He had never been one to shy away from tough questions, but this one was different. This wasn't a question about the future of humanity. This was a question about his own beliefs, his own understanding of the universe. And in that moment, the weight of the question seemed almost unbearable. Do I believe in God? It wasn't a question he had considered publicly in years. He had always been focused on science, on innovation, on building the future. But now, faced with the innocent curiosity of a child, he found himself at a crossroads. The room waited in silence. Elon inhaled deeply, the words on the tip of his tongue. And then, with a calm, measured voice, he began to answer. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been a man driven by the desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. From a young age, he had been captivated by the wonders of the universe, its vastness, its mysteries, its potential. He wasn't born into a world of privilege, but he quickly learned to use his mind to escape the constraints of his circumstances. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon was the son of a Canadian mother and a South African father. His parents' divorce when he was just a child had a lasting impact on him, often leaving him feeling isolated and lost. His mother, a dietitian and model, was a source of support during his early years, while his father, an engineer, was distant and emotionally unavailable. Despite the challenging family dynamics, Elon's love for technology and science flourished. As a boy, Elon was deeply introverted, often lost in the pages of books. Science fiction novels, particularly the works of Isaac Asimov and Douglas Adams, filled his imagination. They spoke of worlds beyond Earth, of intergalactic travel, and of technology that could change the course of humanity. These stories became his refuge, a place where he could dream beyond the limitations of his environment. But as Elon grew older, the harsh realities of life began to settle in. His teenage years were filled with bullying and loneliness. His peers didn't understand him, and his interest in computers and technology set him apart from the other kids. He was the outsider, the odd one. Yet, he remained undeterred. His determination to forge his own path only deepened. After moving to Canada to attend Queen's University, Elon would go on to study physics and economics at the University of Pennsylvania. His academic journey was a search for understanding of the world around him, of how things worked, and of the forces that shaped human existence. But it wasn't just about formulas and equations. Elon wanted to understand the bigger picture. He wanted to know, what is the purpose of it all? He asked questions about the universe, about consciousness, and about life itself. Questions that often led him to a deeper yearning for answers that science alone could not provide. It was during these years that Elon began his search for meaning. While studying physics at Stanford University, he dropped out after just 2 days to pursue his entrepreneurial dreams. But even then, as he was building his empire, he couldn't ignore the bigger question. What is life about? What was the purpose behind the constant drive for innovation, the relentless pursuit of progress? His journey took him to places of deep reflection, moments when he felt lost in the face of his own success. The more he built, the more questions seemed to rise, particularly when it came to the topics of faith and spirituality. He had never been one to follow any particular religion, but there was always something inside him, a longing for something greater. He began to explore various philosophies, even visiting spiritual retreats. He met with monks, philosophers, and scientists who looked at the world through a different lens. These encounters, though fleeting, sparked something in him. There was beauty in the mystery of life, in the things that couldn't be explained through logic and reason alone. But Elon, true to his nature, didn't have all the answers. While he built rockets that soared toward Mars and electric cars that reshaped the way the world thought about transportation, he grappled with an inner conflict. Could technology and science explain everything? Or was there something else at play? Something beyond the scope of human understanding? As his companies grew, so did the pressure to keep pushing the limits of what was possible. With SpaceX, Tesla, and his other ventures, Elon had become a symbol of innovation and hope for the future. But deep down, he still found himself wondering if the answers to life's biggest questions could be found in the stars he was reaching for, or if they were closer to home, in the quiet moments of reflection. And so, years later, when a little girl in the front row of his press conference asked him a simple question, "Do you believe in God?" Elon was reminded of the very search he had been on for most of his life. It was a question that wasn't just about religion. It was about the deeper meaning of existence, the connection between humanity and the universe. As he stood there, facing the innocence of that question, Elon realized that he might not have all the answers. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity. He was not just an inventor, a businessman, or a visionary. He was a person, like everyone else, on a journey to understand the mysteries of life. And maybe, just maybe, this little girl's question was the push he needed to explore those mysteries in ways he never had before. The seconds stretched on like hours as Elon stood there, looking at the little girl with her innocent, expectant eyes. The weight of her question seemed to fill the room, pressing down on him. For a moment, he wondered if he should just give a quick, scientific answer, something about the universe and its complexities, something that could satisfy everyone's expectations. But the question lingered, tugging at something deeper within him. The press conference was already an overwhelming spectacle. Questions about Mars, electric cars, and the future of artificial intelligence were the focus of every headline. And here, in the midst of it all, was a little girl asking him about God. It wasn't the kind of question people usually ask the tech mogul who was reshaping the future. This wasn't a question about rockets or electric vehicles. It was a question about the very fabric of life itself. Elon took a breath. His mind raced. What did he believe? He knew the world expected him to have all the answers, to offer up something grand and visionary. But the reality was, he didn't know. He had spent his life building companies, launching rockets, and advancing technologies that would change the world. But none of that seemed to answer the deepest questions of human existence. And now, standing in front of this child, he felt the conflict, his logical, scientific mind against the quiet stirrings of something bigger, something spiritual. The audience was waiting. The cameras were rolling. The The pressure to answer was mounting. Elon could feel the eyes of the world on him, but it was the eyes of that little girl, so pure, so full of hope, that seemed to pierce straight through him. She wasn't asking him to launch a spaceship or design a new electric car. She was asking him about something far more important, the meaning of life, the existence of God. What could he say? Elon shifted his weight, his thoughts in a whirlwind. He had never been one to speak on matters of faith. He had always been more comfortable discussing the practical, the tangible, the stuff of science. It was easy to build rockets that reached for the stars, to push the boundaries of what was possible in technology. But when it came to questions of the soul, of the divine, it was a whole different world. As his thoughts swirled, he caught sight of the little girl once more. Her eyes were full of trust, as if she already knew the answer was out there, waiting to be discovered. She didn't expect him to have all the answers. She just wanted him to be honest. And in that moment, Elon realized something. The world didn't need him to be a god. It needed him to be human, to speak the truth, even when it was hard, even when it was uncertain. Elon cleared his throat. He knew that whatever he said next would make headlines around the world. This could be the most important answer he'd ever give. But the pressure didn't overwhelm him. It fueled him. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of clarity. He turned toward the microphone, his gaze still fixed on the little girl, and began to speak. Elon's voice was steady, but there was a certain rawness in his words that took everyone by surprise. I can't say I know the answer, he began, pausing for a moment as the room fell even quieter, almost as if the air itself was holding its breath. I've spent my life trying to understand the universe, to push the boundaries of what we know. I've explored the farthest reaches of space, and I've built machines that can drive themselves. But when it comes to questions like the one you've asked me, the truth is, I don't have a clear answer. A collective murmur passed through the crowd, some confused, others intrigued, but no one dared to interrupt. Elon took another breath before continuing. But what I do know is this. The universe is vast and incredibly complex. There are forces at work that we are only beginning to understand, forces that shape everything around us. Some of those forces, to me, feel like they might be beyond our grasp, things that can't be explained through science alone. They feel spiritual in nature. And in moments like this, when we are faced with the unknown, it's okay to ask the bigger questions. Elon paused again, looking out at the audience, his eyes momentarily distant as if he were lost in thought. I've often wondered, he continued, whether our pursuit of knowledge, our desire to go to Mars, to build things that change the world, whether it's part of a deeper, more profound journey. Maybe the universe itself is asking us to discover something bigger than what we can touch and see. Something about who we are and why we're here. And maybe we're meant to find that out together. For a brief moment, Elon's gaze shifted back to the little girl, who was now smiling gently, her eyes full of the same hope and wonder she'd had when she first asked the question. It was as if, in her innocent curiosity, she had unlocked something inside him, something he hadn't realized he was searching for. The room was still. No one had ever expected this answer from a man who was known for his sharp, scientific focus. But in that moment, Elon Musk seemed to connect the dots between his work, his endless ambition, and the profound mysteries of existence. It was a moment of realization, not just for him, but for everyone present. For years, Elon had lived in the world of logic and innovation, always pushing forward with his eyes set on the future. But here he was, acknowledging that there were things beyond his reach, things that could not be explained through numbers and equations. Perhaps, he thought, the true purpose of life was not just to innovate, but to understand the bigger picture. The journey of discovery wasn't only about rockets or cars or artificial intelligence. It was about understanding ourselves, our place in the universe, and what it all meant. Elon looked out at the sea of faces in the crowd, all waiting for him to continue. They had come for answers, for his vision of the future, for his unflinching confidence in the potential of technology. But now, the conversation had shifted. They were no longer just talking about space exploration. They were talking about something deeper, about the human experience itself. I don't know if I believe in God in the traditional sense, Elon said, his voice softening, as if trying to make sense of his own thoughts. But I do believe in the possibility that there's something more, something greater than us, guiding us. And maybe that's the real mission, to find out what that is. There was a moment of silence as the weight of his words hung in the air. Then, the little girl spoke again, her voice small but full of wisdom beyond her years. "Maybe we don't have to know everything," she said softly. "Maybe it's okay to just keep asking." Elon smiled, feeling something shift inside him. It wasn't the grand, eloquent answer that everyone expected, but it was honest, and in that moment, it felt right. As the crowd began to applaud softly, Elon felt a strange sense of peace. He didn't have all the answers, and maybe no one did. But in his heart, he knew this moment was a turning point, not just for him, but for everyone in that room. Sometimes, the journey to understanding wasn't about finding a definitive answer. It was about embracing the questions and accepting that the search itself was meaningful. He had spent his life reaching for the stars. Maybe now, he would take a moment to appreciate the beauty of the journey itself. The words lingered in the room long after the applause faded away. For a few seconds, the energy felt different, lighter, almost surreal. The crowd was still processing what had just transpired. This wasn't the Elon Musk they had come to know, the tech visionary with his ambitious projects and cold precision. This was a side of him they hadn't seen before. A vulnerable side, one that admitted uncertainty and, perhaps for the first time in his career, allowed space for something beyond science to take hold. As the press conference continued, it was clear that the atmosphere had changed. The questions that followed seemed almost trivial, revolving around technical aspects of Tesla's latest advancements and SpaceX's next launch. But there was an undeniable shift in the room. The audience wasn't just interested in tech anymore. They were now grappling with something bigger. They were no longer just listening to a man who could predict the future. They were listening to a man who had, for a brief moment, opened up about his inner world. The moment lingered with Elon long after the event ended. He had walked out of the conference room, surrounded by his team, and the weight of the day pressed down on him. His thoughts were a swirl of emotions. His mind went back to that little girl, her unguarded question that had cracked open something he didn't even know was there. In the silence of his office, he sat alone, staring at the moon through the massive windows. The night sky looked different to him now. There, in the vastness of space, he could almost feel the truth that he had been searching for. His gaze softened as he thought back to her words, and his heart felt heavy with something he couldn't quite explain. He had answered her question with the best honesty he could offer, but in truth, it had uncovered something inside of him that he hadn't fully understood. The quest for knowledge, the endless pushing of boundaries, it was all-consuming. But was that the point? Had he been so focused on reaching for the stars that he forgot about the human connection that made the stars worth reaching for in the first place? Sitting there, in the quiet of his office, Elon felt a sense of emotional weight that he had never allowed himself to feel before. The tears that came weren't the result of failure or frustration. They were the result of an awakening, a quiet understanding that, despite all his accomplishments, there were still things he didn't know. Things that no amount of technology could answer. Things that, for the first time, he allowed himself to truly reflect on. It wasn't just about rockets or AI or Tesla's next big breakthrough. It was about the human condition. It was about asking questions that had no clear answers, finding beauty in the uncertainty, and allowing that uncertainty to drive you forward. It was about the connection between all of us, and how our search for meaning was as essential as the search for knowledge. Elon wiped his eyes, a rare moment of vulnerability for the man who had built an empire from nothing. He had always been the one who inspired others to reach for the stars, but in that moment, he realized that it wasn't the stars themselves that mattered. It was the journey, the connections we made along the way, the questions we asked, and the people we became in the process. The world expected certainty from him. They expected grand visions and groundbreaking innovations. But in that moment, Elon Musk realized that the most important thing he could do wasn't to answer all the questions, wasn't to build the next great thing. It was to keep asking the big ones, to keep reaching for the unknown, not just with technology, but with an open heart. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. He looked at the screen. A message from a close friend popped up. "That was a powerful moment today, Elon. You've always been focused on reaching Mars. Maybe it's time you start looking at the stars in a different way." The words hit him harder than he expected. Maybe it was time for him to let go of the unrelenting pursuit of the next big thing. Maybe it was time for him to find peace with the questions he didn't have the answers to. Elon smiled faintly, his eyes still on the moon outside. He had built rockets to reach for the stars, but now he realized that the real journey was about understanding the connections between the stars and between people. The days following the press conference felt surreal to Elon. He had expected to move on from the event quickly, as he usually did with the constant stream of interviews, meetings, and projects that demanded his attention. But this time, something had shifted within him. The question the little girl asked had cracked open a space in his heart that had been closed for so long, and now, it felt impossible to ignore. In the weeks that followed, Elon began to approach his work with a different mindset. He still pursued his projects with the same intensity and ambition that had always driven him, but now, there was something deeper guiding his decisions. He found himself more focused on the why rather than the how. Why was he pushing for Mars colonization? Why was he so obsessed with creating a sustainable future for humanity? It wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was about leaving a legacy, not only for the future of the planet, but for the people who would live on it. He started taking more time to reflect, to sit with his thoughts rather than constantly rushing forward. It became clear that, despite all the breakthroughs and innovations he had achieved, there was a deeper sense of fulfillment he was searching for. A fulfillment that had nothing to do with money, success, or even space exploration. It was about connection. It was about understanding the bigger picture, embracing the mystery of life, and accepting that he didn't have all the answers, and that was okay. One evening, as Elon sat alone in his office, staring out at the bustling city below, he thought back to that little girl. Her simple question had made him realize something profound, that the pursuit of knowledge wasn't just a solitary journey. It was a shared one. People, relationships, emotions. These were the things that truly mattered. It wasn't the science that defined humanity. It was the connections between people, the shared experiences, and the questions they asked one another. He remembered her smile, the way she had looked at him with unshakable trust, as if she knew that somewhere, in the vast unknown, there was a higher truth waiting to be discovered. In her innocence, she had reminded him of something he had long forgotten, that the search for meaning wasn't about conquering the universe, but about understanding its mystery. Elon thought about how different his perspective had become. The relentless drive to push humanity to new heights had always been rooted in a desire to solve the world's biggest challenges, but now, he saw it differently. It was about helping people reach their own answers, not just his. His legacy wasn't going to be defined by the machines he built or the planets he helped humanity reach. It would be defined by how he had inspired others to question, to dream, and to never stop seeking the truth. As he sat there, deep in thought, the answer to the question that had haunted him for so long began to take shape. What was the true purpose of his work? It wasn't to simply create groundbreaking technologies or to push the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. It was to inspire others to see the world not just for what it was, but for what it could be. He smiled softly, realizing that this realization had been with him all along, buried beneath the weight of success and ambition. The little girl had opened his eyes to something he had never fully embraced. The beauty of uncertainty, the joy of asking questions, and the importance of the journey itself. Elon stood up, walked to the window, and gazed at the stars. In the vastness of space, he felt both small and incredibly powerful. He may not have all the answers, but he was okay with that. In fact, it was the questions that mattered most. The world was a complex and mysterious place, and Elon realized that his role wasn't just to solve its problems with technology, but to help people discover their own answers along the way. The journey toward understanding was just as important as the destination. And so, as the moon glowed brightly above, Elon made a quiet vow to himself. He would continue reaching for the stars, but this time, he would do so with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't about building a legacy of machines and inventions. It was about building a legacy of questions, of curiosity, and of shared human experience. The journey, he realized, was just beginning. Months passed since that pivotal moment with the little girl, but the lessons Elon had learned remained fresh in his mind. He continued his work, of course. Tesla and SpaceX were still his priorities, and he wasn't about to abandon the missions that had shaped his life. But something had shifted inside him. He was no longer just a man focused on technological advancement. He was someone deeply engaged with the mysteries of life, with the questions that lay just beyond human understanding. It was a quiet afternoon when he found himself sitting in his office, once again looking out at the stars. The steady hum of the city's activity below seemed distant now, as if the world had quieted, allowing him the space to think. He thought about the great pioneers throughout history, the inventors, the explorers, the thinkers, how they had shaped the world with their bold ideas and unyielding belief in progress. But as he sat there, he realized that progress alone wasn't enough. It wasn't just about changing the world with new inventions. It was about changing hearts and minds, about opening people up to new possibilities, about inviting them into the conversation. Elon had always been an outsider in many ways, a visionary who pushed boundaries, who believed that technology could change the very fabric of existence. He was used to being misunderstood, to being questioned, to facing doubt. But now, the idea of questioning wasn't just something he wanted to inspire in others. It was something he wanted to embrace within himself. The humility to admit uncertainty, the courage to ask difficult questions, and the grace to seek answers that might not come easily. The more he reflected, the more Elon found that the most profound discoveries came not from grand, groundbreaking ideas, but from the small moments of connection. Whether it was a simple conversation, a question from a child, or a quiet moment of introspection, these were the things that made the world not just a place of knowledge, but a place of meaning. He reached for his phone and called his team at SpaceX, an unusual thing for him to do in a moment like this, but he felt an unexpected surge of inspiration. He had an idea. No, it wasn't a new project or a new rocket, but it was something far more profound. "Hey, we need to make some changes," Elon began, speaking in his usual brisk, straightforward tone. "We've done a lot of things that have pushed humanity forward technologically, but I think it's time we do something else. Something that encourages people to reflect on their place in the universe. I want us to rethink our mission. It's not just about going to Mars or creating sustainable energy. It's about reminding people why we're doing this, to spark curiosity, to help people understand that there's more out there than what we see and touch." His team was silent for a moment. Elon was a man who had always been driven by goals that had clear, measurable outcomes. To hear him speak in such philosophical terms was unusual, but no one interrupted him. His voice was quieter, more thoughtful than usual. "I want us to create something that's not just groundbreaking. It has to be life-changing. I want us to inspire not only through technology, but through the stories we tell. Let's create something that makes people look up at the stars and think, what's out there for me to discover? What questions haven't I asked yet?" There was a pause, and then a voice from the other end of the line spoke up. "Are you talking about a new project, Elon? Something in space?" "No, not exactly," Elon replied, his voice calm but filled with the weight of his newfound understanding. "I'm talking about something that reaches beyond the rockets and the cars and the batteries. We need to remind people that while we're exploring the outer limits of the universe, we're also exploring the depths of ourselves. Let's make sure the journey isn't just about technology, but about the human experience." And so, the seed of a new project was planted, one that would help connect humanity to its deepest questions, to the mysteries that no amount of scientific knowledge could explain. It would be about the pursuit of meaning, not just progress. A journey that began with a question from a little girl, a question that had set Elon on a path of reflection and transformation. As the days passed, Elon found himself speaking more openly about the things that had once seemed too personal to share. At conferences, in meetings, and even on social media, he began to weave in thoughts about faith, purpose, and the interconnectedness of all life. The more he talked about it, the more he realized how many people were searching for something more, something beyond the world of technology and data. They, too, wanted to know why they were here, what their lives meant, and how they fit into the vastness of the universe. One evening, while preparing for an upcoming SpaceX launch, Elon found himself reflecting on that conversation again. He had always been a man of action, a man who believed in solving problems. But now, he understood that some problems didn't have solutions. Some things, like the mystery of existence, were meant to be embraced, not solved. He smiled as he looked out the window at the night sky. The stars twinkled in the distance, distant and unknown, yet somehow familiar. There was still so much to discover, and yet, it was okay not to have all the answers. The journey itself was what mattered most. The months that followed marked a new chapter in Elon Musk's life. He still woke up early, checked in on Tesla's progress, spoke with his team at SpaceX, and worked tirelessly to keep pushing the envelope on what humanity could accomplish. But now, there was a new layer to his vision. He was no longer just the man who wanted to build electric cars, send humans to Mars, or revolutionize the energy industry. He was someone who wanted to change how humanity viewed itself. It had all begun with that one question from a little girl, a question that shook him to his core. "Do you believe in God?" She had asked it so simply, so innocently, and it had made him realize something. The grand pursuit of science, the ambition to explore the universe, the drive to innovate, all of it, while groundbreaking, needed a deeper purpose. It was about human connection, about understanding why we do the things we do, not just how we do them. As he sat in his office, looking out at the city lights twinkling below, Elon felt the weight of his thoughts more heavily than ever before. For so long, he had dedicated his life to solving the world's biggest problems: climate change, space exploration, the energy crisis. But in that moment, he understood that there were even bigger questions, questions that didn't have easy answers, questions about love, about faith, about purpose. And those were the questions that, despite all the technological advancements in the world, still united humanity at its core. Elon knew that he had to do something different. He had always been a man who loved to challenge conventional thinking, and now, that drive was pushing him in an entirely new direction. He began to invest his time, energy, and resources into a project that wasn't about rockets or electric vehicles. It was about people. It was about bringing humanity together through shared experiences, through stories that inspired them to ask bigger questions, to seek deeper truths. The project was born out of this newfound purpose, a global initiative that would use the power of storytelling, art, and technology to spark conversations about life's most fundamental questions. The initiative would bring together scientists, philosophers, theologians, artists, and ordinary people from all walks of life to explore these profound ideas and share them with the world. It wasn't just about technology. It was about understanding the human experience in all its complexities. The announcement of this new project stunned the world. People were used to hearing about Elon Musk's latest ventures, Tesla's newest electric car, SpaceX's next mission. But this was different. This wasn't a company or a product. It was a movement, an invitation to engage in a deeper dialogue about the things that really mattered. As the project took shape, Elon began to see the impact it had on people. The conversations it sparked, the questions it raised. People began to realize that their lives had more meaning than they had ever considered. They started to see the connections between science, faith, and philosophy, and how these elements could coexist in a way that wasn't about answers, but about exploration. Through this initiative, Elon began to travel the world, meeting people from different cultures, hearing their stories, and witnessing firsthand how these conversations were transforming lives. He spoke with religious leaders in remote villages, scientists in high-tech laboratories, and children in classrooms. The common thread was the search for truth, for understanding, for meaning. One of the most memorable experiences for Elon came when he visited a small rural community in Africa, where children who had never seen electricity before were learning about the stars through a new, innovative educational program funded by his foundation. As he spoke to the children about the wonders of the universe, one little girl raised her hand. "Do you think we'll ever know everything?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Elon paused. The question felt oddly familiar, like it had been asked before. It took him back to that moment with the little girl who had asked about God. He smiled gently at the child and responded, "No, we won't know everything. But that's what makes life so beautiful. The questions are just as important as the answers." As he spoke, he realized that this was the essence of everything he had been working toward. It wasn't about mastering the universe or solving every problem. It was about inspiring others to keep asking, to keep seeking, and to keep exploring. Back in his office, Elon reflected on the past few months. He had started with one question, one simple question that had sparked a profound shift in his life. In that moment, he felt truly content for the first time in years. He wasn't just building rockets or cars anymore. He was helping humanity build something even more important, a shared understanding, a community bound together by curiosity, wonder, and the pursuit of truth. His team, his family, the people he met around the world, they were all part of this bigger journey. Elon knew that the answers he had been seeking weren't out there in the stars, but within the hearts of the people he met, the conversations he shared, and the questions he dared to ask. As he stood up from his desk, looking once again at the stars, he whispered to himself, "We may never have all the answers, but the search will always be worth it." Years had passed since Elon's transformative moment with the little girl, but the lessons he learned from that single interaction had rippled through every aspect of his life. He had built rockets and cars, sent humanity into space, and changed the way the world thought about sustainability. Yet, despite all of this, the most profound change had come not from his technological achievements, but from his ability to embrace uncertainty, humility, and the power of asking the right questions. Elon had become a different person, one who no longer measured success purely by tangible accomplishments, but by the depth of the connections he made with others. His legacy was no longer just about the incredible feats of engineering and innovation he had led. It was about the ways in which he inspired people to question, to think deeply, and to explore the mysteries of existence. He had built something bigger than any spaceship or electric car, a global movement that had sparked conversations about faith, purpose, and meaning. Through his initiative, people from all walks of life, scientists, philosophers, artists, and everyday individuals, had come together to explore the things that truly mattered. The initiative wasn't just about sharing knowledge. It was about fostering a space where people could reflect on their own lives, challenge their assumptions, and open themselves up to new possibilities. One day, Elon found himself in a small, quiet auditorium in a university, speaking to a crowd of students about the importance of asking difficult questions. The room was filled with young minds eager to learn, eager to push boundaries just like he had. But this time, it wasn't about technology or space exploration. It was about the journey of self-discovery, of understanding the universe and our place within it. As he spoke, a young woman raised her hand. "Mr. Musk," she said, "how did you find the courage to keep asking these big questions, even when they didn't seem to have answers?" Elon smiled at the question. It was one he had asked himself many times. "I think," he said slowly, "it's because I realized that the answers don't matter as much as the journey. The act of questioning itself, of searching for meaning, gives our lives purpose. We may never find all the answers, but in the process of asking, we grow. We learn. We evolve." The room fell silent, and for a moment, Elon felt a deep connection with everyone there. These students, these young thinkers, they were on a journey just like he had been, asking questions and seeking answers to the same mysteries of existence that had haunted him for years. That evening, as he walked through the campus, Elon's mind wandered back to that moment years ago when the little girl had asked him about God. He realized now that her simple question had been the catalyst for everything that had followed. The reflection, the change in direction, the understanding that his life's work wasn't just about technology, but about inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery. It was about showing the world that questions were just as valuable as answers, and that the pursuit of truth was a never-ending process. As the night sky stretched above him, Elon thought about the legacy he would leave behind. It wasn't just about the companies he had built, the rockets he had sent into space, or the innovations that had transformed the world. His legacy would be about something far more profound. The questions he had asked, the curiosity he had sparked in others, and the way he had encouraged people to explore the mysteries of the universe, both out there in the stars and within themselves. Years later, after Elon had stepped down from his day-to-day role at SpaceX and Tesla, he found himself sitting in a quiet, sunlit room, reflecting on everything he had experienced. His work had taken him to places he had never imagined, but it was the people he had met, the conversations he had shared, and the questions that had shaped him that remained his greatest accomplishments. He thought back to that little girl whose innocent question had altered the course of his life. She had asked him about God, and in doing so, she had opened his heart to the profound truth that the search for meaning is the essence of being human. It was a search that would never truly end, but that was what made it beautiful. The journey itself, full of questions, doubts, and reflections, was the greatest adventure of all. As he looked out the window at the world he had helped to shape, Elon smiled. The future was uncertain, but that was exactly how it was supposed to be. It wasn't about knowing everything. It was about asking the questions that would take humanity to new places, both literally and figuratively. And in that moment, he knew that, just like the little girl who had sparked his transformation, there would always be more questions. And with every question, there would be another step forward, toward a future filled not just with answers, but with curiosity, wonder, and the endless pursuit of truth. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What's the most important question you've ever asked, and what did it teach you?